CSS Selectors and Specificity. Understanding CSS selectors and specificity is crucial for effectively styling web pages. This guide breaks down the most important CSS selectors, from basic element and class selectors to advanced pseudo-classes and pseudo-elements. You'll also learn how specificity affects which styles are applied when multiple rules target the same element. By mastering these concepts, you'll be able to write clean, maintainable, and scalable CSS for any web project. A final challenge at the end will help you put everything into practice. Let's dive into CSS selectors and explore their functionality to enhance our styling skills. CSS selectors. CSS selectors define how we target HTML elements to apply styles. Understanding these will help you style web pages effectively. Let's dive into the types of CSS selectors and explore their proper usage. Type of CSS selectors. CSS offers various types of selectors that help style HTML content on a web page. Let's explore them now. 1. Universal selector. The asterisk selector applies styles to every single element on the page. Example of the universal selector in CSS. Real-world use case. This is commonly used as a CSS reset to remove default browser styles and ensure a consistent layout. Element selector. Element selector targets specific HTML elements by their tag name. Example of element selector. If you want all H1 headings on your blog to have a blue color and bigger size, use this selector. Let's move to the next section. 3. Class selector. Class name. Class selector targets elements with a specific class, useful for reusable styles. Example of class selector. Real-world use case. For theming, reusable styling, JavaScript interactions, responsive design, and state management. 4. ID Selector, hash ID name. ID Selector targets one unique element by its ID. Example of ID Selector. Real-world use case. Used for unique elements like a website's navigation bar or footer. 5. Attribute Selectors. Attribute Selectors targets elements based on attributes. Example using style input fields. Real-world use case. If your form has different input types, text, password, email, and you only want to style text fields. 6. Grouping Selectors. Grouping Selectors allows you to apply the same styles to multiple elements at once. Example of grouping selectors. Real-world use case. If you want all headings, H1, H2, H3, to have the same style, then you need to use grouping selectors. 7. Pseudo-classes, hover, focus, nth-child. Pseudo-classes allow you to style elements based on their state or position. Types of pseudo-classes. Hover styles an element when the user hovers over it. Example. Focus applies styles when an element, like an input, is focused. Example. Nth-child in targets specific child elements based on their position in a parent container. Example. 8. Pseudo-elements, before, after. What are pseudo-elements? Pseudo-elements in CSS allow you to style specific parts of an element without modifying the HTML structure. They act as virtual elements that exist inside or around an actual element, helping designers add extra styling effects. The most commonly used pseudo-elements are before and after. Before inserts content before the main element's content. Example: after inserts content after the main element's content. Example: (9) Selector specificity and inheritance. When multiple styles apply to an element, specificity determines which one is used. This table represents the specificity scores of different CSS selectors. CSS specificity determines which styles are applied when multiple rules target the same element. A higher specificity score means the rule has a stronger priority over others. Example: if both class button and ID special button target the same element, the ID selector wins because it has higher specificity. The button will be red because ID special button has higher specificity. Exercise. We have an HTML form that contains a name input field, type equals text, an email input field, type equals email, a submit button. Use CSS to style the HTML form element 1. Use the asterisk selector to apply basic resets, e.g., remove margins and padding. 2. Use an element selector to style, label, elements. 3. Use a class selector to style input fields. 4. Use an id selector to style the heading uniquely. 5. Use an attribute selector to target, input, type equals, text, and, input, type equals, email. 6. Use the hover pseudo-class to change the appearance of the submit button when hovered. 7. Use the focus pseudo-class to modify the appearance of input fields when they are focused. 8. Use the nth-child pseudo-class to alternate background colors in a list of items. 9. Use the before pseudo-element to add an icon before the heading text. Please pause the video and take a moment to engage with the question. Don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and share this with our community to reach more people. Solution. 1. Use the asterisk selector to apply basic resets, e.g., remove margins and padding. Toe. Use an element selector to style, label, elements. Three. Use a class selector to style input fields. 4. Use an ID selector to style the heading uniquely. Five. Use an attribute selector to target input type equals text and input type equals email. Six. Use the hover pseudo-class to change the appearance of the submit button when hovered. Seven. Use the focus pseudo-class to modify the appearance of input fields when they are focused. Eight. Use the nth-child pseudo-class to alternate background colors in a list of items. Nine. Use the before pseudo-element to add an icon before the heading text. This exercise brings us to the end of this section. Please share our community and stay tuned for our weekly videos. Steadfast Lab is proud of your success. Let's meet again in the next video. Goodbye.